If your Scoutmaster Conference is more of a checklist, then you might be missing the most important part. Hey, ScouterStan, let's talk about the ambiguous Scoutmasters Conference. This is one of those things that's a huge thing. It's required. It's in the handbook. It's actually there. Where this is required for advancement. You have to have a Scoutmasters Conference. And it gets more intense as they go on. But they do not have to be all the time and only about advancement. It could be to get to know the Scout. That's something that a lot of first year emphasis, they will have a lot of those times when they can meet with the Scoutmaster and really talk about those things, what they're learning, these are things that comes up in a Scoutmasters Conference. Now, as many Scout leaders, whether you're in a pack, a crew, a ship, or a troop, this is kind of oriented towards a troop because of the Scoutmasters Conference. But the Scout-facing leadership, all the assistant Scoutmasters, they need opportunities to do these Scoutmaster Conferences. Now, of course, this is all done within the safeguarding Scouts, so it's always 2 deep leadership and so on. And it's a great way for the assistant Scoutmasters to sit in on that Scoutmasters Conference and kind of learn how they're done. And even take that over. If you have a sizable troop, you're going to have a lot of these conferences going on all the time. And it seems that the first time that they think about the youth, think about doing a Scoutmasters Conference is right after the general meeting. And that's not a good time to do it because you could be there all night. And the next day is a school night. So the next day they got to be back in school. So it's just not going to happen. So that scheduling has to be part of that. And getting your assistant Scoutmasters to do some of those Scoutmaster Conferences is important. And they don't have to be just advancement. They could be all kinds of things. One of the big things is to understand that the Scout is a person. They have a lot of things going on in their lives, and they have a lot going on as far as their expectations of scouting. This is information that we need to pull from the Scout. It's very common to have a logbook and to sit there and take notes of the Scouts. So especially if you have a lot of them, it's important to keep that logbook very private, okay? And make sure that the information that you're getting is information that other Scout leaders need to know. And that way they can look through the logbook and make sure that when Billy had an issue at school that they knew about it. Okay, that's something that information that gets transferred to all of the Scout-facing Scout leaders. Now, this information needs to be kept very private. This is not something the other youth see. Okay, this is a logbook for the leaders. Okay, it's not meant for the other youth to get a hold of. So that needs to be maintained and kept so that it's secure, because there's information in there. Might be a family situation that's noted. That's information that the youth do not need, and we don't want to cause any problems as far as that goes. But it's information that the other Scout-facing leaders need to know about. And that might be something in the Scout leaders' meetings when they get all together, they talk about, so that they can help the youth and keep an eye on things. Listening is a real important skill that Scout leaders need to really think about. having that active listening, rephrasing things that are being said from the scout to the adult leader. That's very important. That way you're getting the information from the scout. And having that active listening thing going on. Very important. Now in that, we do have a video for brand new Scoutmasters. It's like 10 things not to forget. Make sure you do your training and all that stuff. Check it out. If you're a brand new Scoutmaster or an assistant Scoutmaster, please check out that video. It'll be helpful. These are things that you might miss. Write them down. Now on this Scoutmasters Conference, one of the things I've noticed is that the Scoutmaster or the assistant Scoutmaster in that conference talks way too much. No. We want to hear from the scout. It's okay to sit there in silence and let them think about an answer to a question. That's fine. The Scoutmaster Conference is not about retesting on skills. That's not what it's for. It's to find out information from the scout. Are they having a good time? What is their biggest challenge? They might sit there and have to think about it. So don't start talking. Okay? That's the important thing with adult leaders. We don't need to hear from them. They've already blah, 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 blah. You get from the youth and use that active listening. Sitting in on those Scoutmaster conferences, if you've never done them before, it's important that you think about those questions. The best ones are open-ended. What did you think about it? Simple stuff. This is big for a youth to really open up and think a little bit about their answer. And not, we learned that because it's important. No. Why do you think that was important to learn at this point? Why? Ask open-ended questions. And some of the older leaders who have done this a lot will have great questions. And that's the thing. Pick up on that. Be mentored by the other adult leaders. Make sure that you're picking up that information and learning how to really do a really good Scoutmaster Conference. Every scout leader needs to have a different approach for every scout. No two scouts are the same. They're all different. They all have different backgrounds. They all have different likes and dislikes. They have different expectations of what they want through scouting. These are things that are different for every scout. There are some scouts that are very quiet and thoughtful. There are some that are very outgoing and they're very boisterous about what they want. That's something that a scout leader needs to absorb that and be able to turn that back to the scouts so that you can get more information. It's okay for silence. That's okay in a Scoutmasters Conference. You want the scout to be thinking. That's the thing. You're asking questions that they need to think about. That's the important bit. And it's not just advancement stuff, okay? This is important stuff. How do you feel about your patrol? And wait for the answer. That's important because there are some scouts that are struggling. They're really having a problem. And we, as adult leaders, need to know about it. This is something that needs to come out, and we need to find out that information so that we can help mentor leadership within that patrol to kind of solve and help them solve their own problem. That's the key. So as a scout leader, we need to be there to just kind of help them along in that regard. One of the big things about it is there are some scouts that will just be tons of information. So let them talk. Sit back, let them speak. You might throw in a few words like, how'd you feel about that? What happened? What did they do? You can ask those questions. That's the neat thing about it. You can get that information. Try to pull that out. It's okay. Now, sometimes it's a checklist, okay, for a lot of scout leaders. It's this question, that question. Sometimes you want to mix it up. Have different questions, different points of view, and don't have a question that has A, B, and C answers. Have them come up with the answers. Have them, even ask them, what kind of question should I be asking? Change your tone. Instead of being dictative and talking directly at them, talk about situations that came up in their patrol. That might be a different avenue to get information or to get ideas from. It's important that we get to know them and we get all that information. Is the scouting program working? That's a big question. Ask them. That is a huge thing. How do they define their patrol and scout spirit? These are just different ways of asking those questions. Ask them those things. That's a huge thing to get them to open up and start talking to the adult leadership that's there to help and to mentor and to facilitate. That's what we do. You're modeling leadership, whether you like it or not, as an adult leader by asking those open-ended questions. That's the model. That's what we want patrol leaders and senior patrol leaders and all the different people, all the different facets. Ask why. Don't tell them why. Ask them. That's the key to a good Scoutmasters Conference. Being that example in the Scoutmasters Conference, being respectful to the youth, is the example of what we want as respect back. That's a big mind shift for a lot of youth, is giving that respect to them up front. If that's the thing. A scout is trustworthy, okay, and we give that to them. They give that back to you. That's the wonderful thing, is that example. Sometimes the confidence is actual leadership in disguise. Think about that. This is big for adult leaders, to think about that confidence. You know, a lot of times you hear people fake it till you make it. Well, no. Just do it and it will happen. That's the real thing. You have to be in that mindset and be able to ask youth simple questions that help them think about the answers and help them understand leadership, duty, all the things that come up in scouting. Very critical for them to think about these things in that Scoutmasters Conference. Hey, before we go any further, I want to make sure that you know that you're personally invited to come to the Campfire Chat. It's a live meeting we hold on the very first Sunday of each month, starting at 9 p.m. Please join us with your questions, and we will answer those live on the show. In addition, I want to also thank all of the Patreon supporters that are helping support what we do here. Also, if you want to get directly involved with the channel, we have a membership. Hit the join button and it will give you more information about how to get involved in supporting what we do. And in that, here's a list of all the people that are continuing their support of our channel. The best questions aren't about requirements. Move beyond, did you complete X? That's the that is handled in the handbook electronically. There's things that you can check on and say, yep, you did. That's the reason. Okay, this is one of those things that a lot of scout leaders tend to get into. They go down the list of requirements. That's not what this meeting is about. Now you can ask questions like, what was the hardest thing to complete in this rank? And literally wait for them to reply, to think about it. Okay? They might even ask for their handbook so they can look through it and say, oh yeah, that was tough. Be patient. You be that example. Let them come up with the answers. Don't just fill in the blank and say A, B, and C. No. This is the important bit, is to make sure that they understand. They need to open up and give you information and think about the things that happened that might be in the book, things that happen within the patrol, things that happen within the troop, campouts, camporees, summer camp, all that stuff. It's very important that all that information be conveyed to the leadership so they can say, yeah, I did good on that, or yeah, I need to improve on that. So these are things that the mentors of your unit, the adult leaders, need that information. Now, with a lot of these rank requirements, especially Star, Life, and Eagle, leadership is involved. So they have to get into some of the troop leadership positions. That's a great way to say, hey, I know you were a quartermaster. What was your biggest challenge? Don't say anything, okay? Stop talking. That's the thing. You gotta open-ended question and wait for them to think about it, and then hear what they're saying. Repeat back. So what you're saying is, if you had enough tents, it would be less stressful. It's very difficult. I really wanted to say more, but you have to be able to just kind of, you gotta pull them along, let them elaborate, talk about it. Let them do that. You can't if you're talking. So just stop. Yeah. So sometimes there's an issue, okay? And you might ask them, what would you do differently than what you did at this? You can ask these questions. Let them answer them. That's that. Very open-ended. Tell me about it. That kind of stuff. And when you've asked the question, just wait for them to talk, and then do that communications, that active listening thing that us as scout leaders do. Failure, or fail, is where real growth happens. This is where it really starts. When you fail, your first attempt in learning, fail, when you do that, you learn so much more. You learn, and that's true for the adults. It's true for the youth too. Let them, give them time to come to that conclusion on their own. You don't have to point it out. They know that it didn't come off the way that they wanted it to. So that campfire was a disaster. And that's fine. They learn from those things. Sometimes there's a missed leadership expectation that your adults have that they just missed. Okay, they went like this and the ball went over their shoulder. Okay, it happens. That's okay. They can turn around, grab the ball, and still be in the game. That's the analogy. We have to let them have those moments. And that's true within anything that we're doing. Board of review, any of the questions, any of this open question stuff, that needs to be there. And we need to include our assistant scoutmasters. They need to be a part of this. They need to be a part of it. They can't be just the scoutmaster, because a lot of times it just becomes a system, a checklist. That's not good. Getting the assistant scoutmasters involved so that they can see the process and maybe add to that process. That's wonderful. And the Scoutmaster Conference is so critical, and having your assistant scoutmasters able to do them will strengthen your whole troop, because it's not dependent on one person doing them. So that's the wonderful thing. There's a video on new assistant scoutmasters. Definitely check that out. It will go into great detail. Now, that video is awesome as far as giving you some ideas as a new assistant scoutmaster, so definitely check it out. But as a Scoutmasters Conference, you need to be in there and actually learn how to do those. That's a skill that a lot of Scoutmasters need to elaborate on and make sure that other assistant Scoutmasters can do that very important meeting. It doesn't have to be just for advancement. In fact, they might say, well, assistant Scoutmasters that are in charge of equipment will ask scouts for a conference, and they will talk about equipment, okay, or specialize in that, and that the Scoutmaster does the advancement stuff. So then you can divide that up. It's all dependent on what you want to do as a scout leader within the unit. Always keep in mind you got to keep everything safe, but that's the key. You have to have good leadership that's willing to step up and do these meetings. Consistency builds trust over time. You are going to have scouts that are going to be very quiet and scared. That's okay. This might be the first time outside of their parents where they've actually had to think and talk, okay, to an adult. It can be very frightening, so give it time. Being consistent, asking what they think, what they feel. That's the big thing. Getting that information that is life-changing for a lot of scouts. They've never had that experience. Even in school, they're always talking with their peers. It's rare that the teacher and the student the teacher actually asking how do they feel about something. That's really rare. Okay, that is something. Okay, that's what they're not used to. So they might be a little shy, a little scared. Give it time. Let them think. Don't just barrage them and keep blah blah and talking, and just let them handle it over time. It'll come. It'll be great. That's the neat thing about it. Now, a lot of times you can find out hidden issues that they didn't even know, that nobody knew. This might be something they observed, something that they've seen. There might be an issue that needs to be addressed. Say, for instance, the patrol flag is falling apart, needs some sewing. They just randomly say raggedy. Okay, well, that might be that sewing project that one of the scouts needs to do. So that might be something that comes up. There might be an issue with we're not getting recognized. We don't get the little totems that the senior patrol leader hands out. We don't have enough. And then you ask them, well, how do you feel about that? What do you think we should do? What do you think as a patrol you can do to do better? These are questions you can bring in there in your Scoutmasters Conference. And little hidden things like that you may not know about. That's something that needs to be talked about. And every word they say, you can take that using that active listening skill and be able to come back with, what do you feel? How do you feel? What do you think we should do? What do you think you can do that'll make it happen better or not happen at all? You know, these are things that the Scoutmaster or Assistant Scoutmaster needs to communicate in that Scoutmasters Conference. This is not just for the Scouts. This could also be for other leaders. If you have Assistant Scoutmasters as a Scoutmaster, you need to be working with them. Ask these questions, open-ended questions. Have a Scoutmasters Conference with your Assistant Scoutmaster. That's fine. That way you can kind of get information and try to find out what you can do to make things better. That's the key. We need to think about how we could take our leadership and even work with our own adult leadership and have them come out of their shell and give information that will definitely help everybody and make it a better scouting unit. That's the beautiful thing. That's the wonderful thing about the Scoutmasters Conference. It doesn't have to be just the youth. It can be the adults too. Now I want to encourage Scoutmasters and Assistant Scoutmasters, any scout-facing leadership, to put in the comments, do you do the Scoutmaster Conference? Do you think about all of the different facets of how that communication comes across in active listening? How that is used to better the scout, to better the patrol, to better the troop. That's the thing. If you have ideas, I love to hear about them. Please put them in the comments. Scouting is not just one person, okay? It's important that we work together and come up with ideas. I don't have all of the ideas, okay? I have some, but I don't have them all. That's the thing. Please use the comments. Remember, Scout Oath, Scout Law, but still, put in the comments anything you'd like to add to this discussion. It's important that we use that Scoutmasters Conference so that it actually betters the scout, the patrol, the troop, everything. Okay, that's the important part. You're a vital part of what we do on this channel. As an adult leader watching videos like this, you are extending your knowledge base. Please don't keep it a secret. Share this knowledge base. There are a lot of videos, more than 300 on this channel, on the Commissioner's Weekly. So definitely put them out there. Give them to people that need them. Try to mentor them too. It doesn't just have to be the youth. You can mentor other adults. This is for the adults, but the youth do watch these videos. So, and I'm so appreciative of all the hard work you do for scouting. Always remember, we're building one great scout at a time, and helping America. That's what we're doing. In Scouting America, we're just working really hard at making a better place, a better America with better youth. That's our goal, to do that. And with that, I want to make sure that you know that there's a lot of different training out there, but the top level of training that's out for all scout leaders is Wood Badge. Now, I know you might have been to Wood Badge. You might have done that. That's fine. encourage others to go that haven't. If you haven't gone, please think about it. There is a video on wood badge, okay? Please think about that. It's right there. So definitely look that over. Until next time, I'll see you on the trail.